A 19-year-old's naked body was found on a highway at dawn, beaten beyond recognition. Police called it a hit and run. His family is fighting to prove it was murder. And the people who know what really happened? They're still walking free. If this story doesn't make your blood boil, you're not paying attention. Hit that subscribe button right now because we're about to dive into a case that will haunt you, and we need your help to get justice. What would you do if your child was found dead and nobody seemed to care about finding the truth? Leave your thoughts in the comments because this story demands answers. It's Labor Day weekend, 2023. You're 19 years old, your whole life ahead of you. You've got dreams bigger than the small Oklahoma town you grew up in. You want to serve your country as a Marine. You're Noah Presgrove, and you have no idea that in less than 72 hours, your naked, beaten body will be discovered on a lonely highway. Noah wasn't just another teenager. This kid had direction, purpose. While his friends were figuring out college majors, Noah was already committed to something bigger than himself. The United States Marine Corps. He was working toward that goal, staying focused, keeping his eye on the prize. His family describes him as driven, loyal, the kind of young man who would give you the shirt off his back. His mother, Casey, remembers how he'd call her every day, every single day. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. When was the last time you called your mom just to check in? That Labor Day weekend started like any other. Noah was excited about the party. A multi-day celebration at a trailer park in Terral, Oklahoma. Just a small town gathering where everyone knew everyone. Where kids like Noah could blow off steam before getting back to the serious business of building their futures. But here's what nobody knew at that party. This would be the last weekend of Noah's life. And the people who were there. They know exactly what happened to him. What's your gut feeling about people who stay silent when they know the truth about someone's death? Are they protecting themselves or are they protecting someone else? Tell us what you think in the comments below. September 2nd, 2023. The party was already in full swing when Noah arrived. This wasn't just any party, it was one of those sprawling multi-day affairs that small towns are famous for. Trailers, ATVs, coolers full of beer, and kids who thought they were invincible. But something was wrong from the start. The drinking was heavy, too heavy. Noah's blood alcohol level at the time of his death would later be measured at nearly twice the legal limit. For a 19-year-old who wasn't even legally allowed to drink, someone was clearly providing alcohol to minors. The lawsuit filed by Noah's family names a local convenience store for allegedly selling alcohol to underage partygoers. Think about that for a second. Adults in this community were facilitating underage drinking at a party where a teenager would end up dead. How does that sit with you? During the party, Noah was involved in an ATV accident. The four-wheeler rolled over with him on it. But here's the thing. Noah got back up. He dusted himself off and returned to the party. He was walking, talking, alive. So whatever killed him happened after that accident. As the night wore on, witnesses say Noah was seen in a heated argument in the early morning hours of September 4th. A heated argument. With whom? About what? These are questions that should have been answered immediately, but somehow they weren't. If you were at a party and saw someone in a heated argument hours before they turned up dead, wouldn't you think that was important information? What would stop you from telling police? Fear? Loyalty? Something else? Share your thoughts. We want to know what you think. 5:43 a.m., September 4th, 2023. A driver on Highway 81 makes a discovery that will haunt them forever. There, on the asphalt, is the naked body of a young man. Beaten, broken, barely recognizable as human. The body was Noah Presgrove, the boy who dreamed of becoming a Marine, the son who called his mother every day, the young man who was alive and arguing with someone just hours before. His injuries were devastating, massive blunt force trauma to his head, torso, and extremities. This wasn't the result of a simple hit and run. This was the result of extreme violence. The kind of violence that speaks to rage, to personal hatred, to something much darker than a traffic accident. But here's where the story gets infuriating. Despite the obvious signs of a violent assault, despite the fact that Noah was found completely naked on a highway, despite the extensive injuries that suggested a prolonged beating, The initial investigation focused on one theory and one theory only: hit and run. How does a naked teenager with massive trauma wounds get labeled as a hit and run victim? How does that make sense to anyone? What do you think when you hear that? Because if you're like most people, you're probably thinking the same thing Noah's family is thinking. Somebody didn't want to dig too deep. Let's talk about what should have happened versus what actually happened. This is where your faith in the justice system might take a serious hit, so brace yourself. When a 19-year-old is found dead under suspicious circumstances, there should be an immediate, thorough investigation. Every person at that party should have been interviewed within 24 hours. The scene should have been processed for evidence. The timeline should have been reconstructed minute by minute. None of that happened. Instead, investigators seem to latch onto the hit-and-run theory and stick with it, despite mounting evidence that something else entirely had occurred. The family's lawsuit alleges that Noah was actually beaten to death at the party, then his body was moved to the highway to make it look like a vehicle strike. Think about the logistics of that for a moment. Someone, or multiple someones, would have had to assault Noah so severely that he died from his injuries. Then, they would have had to strip him naked, transport his body several miles, and dump it on a highway, all while hoping it would look like a traffic accident. That's not the work of one person. That's conspiracy. That's coordination. That's multiple people working together to cover up a murder. And here's the most infuriating part. No one has been arrested, not a single person. Despite the family's lawsuit naming 7 individuals as defendants, despite the obvious signs of foul play, despite the fact that someone at that party knows exactly what happened to Noah, the case remains officially undetermined. What does that word mean to you? Undetermined. It means they're not even trying to solve it. It means they're comfortable with a 19-year-old's death remaining a mystery forever. Do you think this investigation would have been handled differently if Noah came from a wealthy family? If he lived in a different zip code? If he had connections to powerful people? Tell us what you really think in the comments. While investigators seemed content to let Noah's case gather dust, his family refused to accept that their son's death would remain a mystery. Led by his mother Casey, they began their own investigation, asking the questions that law enforcement apparently didn't want to ask. They hired private investigators. They interviewed witnesses themselves. They pushed for toxicology results, for autopsy details, for any scrap of information that might shed light on what happened to their son. The family's lawsuit, filed in civil court, paints a picture of a civil conspiracy, multiple people working together to intoxicate Noah and then harm him. The suit names 7 defendants, including the party hosts and several attendees, plus the convenience store accused of providing alcohol to minors. But think about what this family is going through. They're not just grieving the loss of their son, they're having to become amateur detectives because the professionals won't do their job. They're having to relive the worst night of their lives over and over again, interviewing witnesses, reviewing evidence, fighting for answers that should have been provided from day one. Casey Presgrove has to wake up every morning knowing that the people responsible for her son's death are walking free, that they're going to work, spending time with their families, living their lives while Noah's future was stolen from him. How does a mother survive that kind of torture? And here's what makes it even worse. The community knows who was at that party. In a small town like Terrell, Oklahoma, everyone knows everyone. People know who was there, who was fighting with whom, who had access to vehicles, who might have had motive, but they're staying silent. What would it take for you to break that silence? What would have to happen for you to come forward with information that could solve a murder? Are these people scared, or are they protecting someone? What do you think is keeping them quiet? Here's what's really disturbing about this case: the wall of silence that has surrounded it from the beginning. In a small town where everyone talks about everything, suddenly nobody saw anything, nobody heard anything, nobody knows anything. 7 people are named in the lawsuit, 7 people who were allegedly present when Noah was harmed, 7 people who could provide answers about what happened that night, and all 7 are maintaining their innocence while providing no alternative explanations for how a healthy 19-year-old ended up naked and beaten to death on a highway. But let's think about this logically. If Noah was struck by a vehicle while walking on the highway, where are his clothes? People don't typically walk naked down rural highways in Oklahoma. If he was skinny dipping and then decided to walk home, where's the water? There's no lake, no river, no swimming hole near where his body was found. The nakedness isn't just unusual, it's a smoking gun. It suggests that whatever happened to Noah involved his clothes being removed, either before or after the assault. And that points to something much more sinister than a random traffic accident. Some people in the community believe this case goes deeper than just one night of violence. They whisper about cover-ups, about people with connections protecting the guilty parties, about evidence that mysteriously disappeared or was never properly collected. Why would multiple people risk conspiracy charges to protect someone unless that someone was either very dangerous or very important? What kind of person inspires that level of loyalty or fear? And here's another question that keeps coming up. Why was Noah targeted? Was this random violence, or was there something specific about Noah that made him a target? The lawsuit suggests this was planned, coordinated, intentional. But what would motivate multiple people to conspire to harm a 19-year-old kid whose biggest dream was serving his country? What's your theory about why people would stay silent about a murder? Are they scared of retaliation? Are they protecting someone powerful? Or is there something else we're missing? The comments are open. Tell us what you think. Let's talk about what the physical evidence actually tells us, because this is where the hit-and-run theory completely falls apart. Noah's injuries were described as massive blunt force trauma to his head, torso, and extremities. That's not the injury pattern you see in a typical vehicle strike. When someone is hit by a car, the injuries are usually concentrated in specific areas: legs, hips, chest, depending on the height of the vehicle and the angle of impact. But Noah's injuries were everywhere. Head trauma, torso trauma, extremity trauma. That's the pattern you see in a prolonged assault, not a single vehicle impact. That's someone, or multiple someones, beating a young man to death. The toxicology report showed Noah's blood alcohol level was nearly twice the legal limit. At 19, he wasn't legally allowed to drink at all. But someone was providing alcohol to minors at that party, and Noah was heavily intoxicated when he died. Here's what that means. Noah was vulnerable. He was impaired. He couldn't defend himself effectively, and someone took advantage of that vulnerability to hurt him. The timeline is crucial here. Noah was seen in a heated argument in the early morning hours of September 4th. His body was found at 5:43 a.m. on the same day. That's a narrow window of opportunity, and it suggests that whatever happened occurred shortly after the argument. But here's what investigators should have been asking. Who was Noah arguing with? What was the argument about? Did anyone try to intervene? Did anyone see Noah leave the party? Did anyone see him walking toward the highway? These are basic questions that should have been answered within hours of the discovery. Instead, more than a year later, Noah's death remains officially undetermined. The family's lawsuit provides some answers, but lawsuits aren't criminal trials. Civil court has a lower burden of proof, and the defendants can't be sentenced to prison even if they're found liable. The real answers need to come from law enforcement, and law enforcement seems to have given up. Do you think there's evidence in this case that's being ignored? What would you investigate first if you were put in charge of solving Noah's murder? What questions would you ask that apparently haven't been asked? Here's what's particularly frustrating about this case. We're living in an era where technology can solve crimes that would have been impossible to crack just a few years ago. Cell phone data can place people at specific locations at specific times. Social media posts can provide alibis or destroy them. Digital forensics can recover deleted messages, photos, and call logs. But none of that technology matters if investigators don't use it. And in Noah's case, it's unclear what digital evidence was collected, if any. Think about it. Everyone at that party had a cell phone. Those phones were pinging cell towers, creating a digital record of who was where and when. Those phones likely contained text messages, photos, and social media posts from that night. Some of those posts might have been deleted after Noah's death, but digital forensics experts can often recover deleted data. Modern vehicles have black boxes that record speed, braking, and impact data. If Noah was really struck by a vehicle, that data would exist. The absence of that data, or the failure to collect it, is telling. DNA evidence could be crucial in this case. If Noah was assaulted by multiple people, there might be trace evidence under his fingernails, on his clothing, or on his body. But DNA evidence degrades over time, and if it wasn't collected immediately, it might be gone forever. The party location should have been treated as a crime scene from the beginning. Instead, it appears to have been treated as just another underage drinking party. Evidence could have been lost, contaminated, or destroyed, while investigators focused on the wrong theory. Here's what keeps me up at night. Somewhere out there on someone's phone, there might be photos or videos from that party. There might be text messages discussing what happened to Noah. There might be social media posts that were hastily deleted when news of his death broke. But every day that passes makes that evidence harder to find. Every day that passes, witnesses die, memories fade, and the truth becomes more elusive. What do you think about the role of technology in solving cold cases? Should investigators be doing more to recover digital evidence? Are there techniques you think they should be using that they haven't tried yet? Let's talk about the community response to Noah's death, because this is where the story gets even more heartbreaking. In a small town like Terrell, Oklahoma, everyone knows everyone. When a 19-year-old dies under suspicious circumstances, that should galvanize the entire community. People should be demanding answers. They should be pressuring law enforcement to investigate thoroughly. They should be coming forward with information. Instead, there's been a disturbing silence. The people who were at that party have largely refused to cooperate with the family's investigation. Witnesses have been reluctant to come forward. The community that should be rallying around the Presgrove family seems to have closed ranks against them. Why? What are they protecting? Or whom are they protecting? There's a theory that in small towns, certain families have more influence than others. Certain names carry more weight. Certain people get protected while others get sacrificed. Is that what happened here? Did Noah's death get swept under the rug because the wrong people were involved? The family's lawsuit suggests a conspiracy not just to harm Noah, but to cover up that harm afterward. That kind of conspiracy requires multiple people who are willing to prioritize their own interests over justice for a murdered teenager. Think about the moral calculus involved here. These are people who watched a 19-year-old get beaten to death, or at least participated in covering up his murder, and then went home to their families. They tucked their own children into bed, while Noah's mother was planning a funeral. How do you live with that? How do you look at yourself in the mirror every morning, knowing that you have information that could bring a family peace, but you're keeping it to yourself? And here's what makes it even worse. Noah dreamed of serving his country. He wanted to be a Marine. He wanted to protect people, to serve something bigger than himself. The people who killed him, and the people who are protecting his killers, they're everything Noah stood against. What do you think it says about a community when they close ranks to protect murderers instead of seeking justice for the victim? Have you ever lived in a small town where certain people seemed untouchable? Tell us about it in the comments. While the criminal investigation has stalled, the civil lawsuit filed by Noah's family continues to move forward. But here's the thing about civil court. It's not the same as criminal court. The burden of proof is lower, the penalties are financial rather than criminal, and the defendants can't be sent to prison even if they're found liable. The lawsuit names 7 defendants, the party hosts, several attendees, and the convenience store accused of providing alcohol to minors. The family is alleging wrongful death, civil conspiracy, and various other claims related to Noah's death. But winning a civil lawsuit doesn't bring back a son. It doesn't put his killers in prison. It doesn't give the family the justice they're really seeking. It's a necessary step, but it's not enough. The family needs the criminal justice system to work. They need law enforcement to do their job. They need prosecutors who are willing to pursue charges even when the case is complicated, even when the defendants have local connections, even when it's politically inconvenient. Instead, they're getting silence. They're getting an undetermined death classification that essentially means we don't know and we're not trying to find out. Here's what's particularly infuriating. The family shouldn't have to fight this battle alone. This should be the state of Oklahoma fighting for Noah. This should be federal authorities stepping in when local authorities fail. This should be a community demanding answers. Instead, it's a grieving family taking on a system that seems designed to protect the guilty and abandon the innocent. The legal battle is ongoing, but every day that passes makes justice less likely. Witnesses die, evidence degrades, memories fade. The people responsible for Noah's death are banking on time being their ally, on the family eventually giving up, on the community eventually forgetting. But Noah's family isn't giving up, and we're not letting this case die in some forgotten file cabinet. What do you think about the difference between civil and criminal justice? Should families have to fight these battles alone, or should the state be doing more to pursue criminal charges? How long should we wait for justice before we demand action? Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the 7 people named in the lawsuit. These are people who were allegedly present when Noah was harmed, people who the family believes conspired to hurt him and then cover up their actions. I can't name them here because they haven't been criminally charged, but they know who they are. Their families know who they are. Their community knows who they are, and they're walking free while Noah's family suffers every single day. The lawsuit describes a civil conspiracy, multiple people working together to intoxicate Noah and then harm him. That's not a spur-of-the-moment crime. That's planned, that's coordinated, that's evil. But here's what I want you to think about. These people have been living with this secret for over a year now. They've been going to work, spending time with their families, celebrating holidays, while Noah's family has been destroyed by grief. How do you do that? How do you live a normal life knowing that you participated in the murder of a teenager? How do you look at your own children and not think about the young man whose future you helped destroy? The lawsuit suggests that after Noah was beaten to death, his body was moved to the highway to make it look like a hit and run. That means someone, or multiple someones, handled his dead body. They stripped him naked. They transported him. They positioned him on the road. That's not just murder. That's desecration of a corpse. That's treating a human being like garbage to be disposed of. And these people think they're going to get away with it. They think their silence will protect them. They think time will make this go away. They're wrong. Every day that passes, the pressure builds. Every day that passes, someone gets a little more desperate, a little more willing to talk. Every day that passes, the conspiracy becomes harder to maintain. One of them is going to break. One of them is going to decide that living with this secret is worse than facing the consequences. One of them is going to realize that protecting the others isn't worth sacrificing their own future. And when that happens, this whole conspiracy is going to collapse. What do you think about people who stay silent about murder? Are they cowards or are they scared? What would it take for one of them to come forward? Should they be offered immunity in exchange for testimony? Here's what gives me hope about this case. Noah's family hasn't given up. Despite the failures of law enforcement, despite the silence of the community, despite the passage of time, they're still fighting for answers. Casey Presgrove wakes up every morning and chooses to fight for her son. She could give up. She could accept that Noah's death will remain a mystery forever. She could try to move on with her life. Instead, she's pursuing the lawsuit. She's keeping Noah's story alive. She's refusing to let his death be swept under the rug. And she's inspiring others to demand justice. The case has gained national attention through social media, true crime podcasts, and news coverage. Every time someone shares Noah's story, every time someone asks questions about his death, every time someone demands answers, the pressure builds on the people who know the truth. Technology continues to advance. New forensic techniques are being developed. Old evidence can be re-examined with new methods. Cases that seemed impossible to solve are being cracked decades later. There's also the possibility that federal authorities could get involved. If there's evidence of conspiracy, if there's evidence of civil rights violations, if there's evidence of corruption in the local investigation, federal agents have resources and jurisdiction that local authorities lack. But here's what really gives me hope. The truth has a way of coming out. Secrets this big don't stay secret forever. Someone always talks. Someone always cracks. Someone always decides that their conscience matters more than their fear. And when that happens, Noah will finally get the justice he deserves. The family is offering a reward for information leading to Noah's killer. They're asking anyone with knowledge of what happened that night to come forward. They're promising that tips can be anonymous, that people can help without exposing themselves to danger. Someone out there knows what happened to Noah. Someone out there has the information that could solve this case. Someone out there could give this family the peace they desperately need. If you know something about Noah's death, if you were at that party, if you heard something, if you saw something, if you know someone who was involved, please come forward. A family is waiting for answers. A community is waiting for justice. A young man is waiting for his story to be told. Do you believe justice will eventually come in this case? What would convince you to come forward with information if you had it? How do we keep cases like this alive when the authorities seem to have given up? It's been over a year since Noah Presgrove was found beaten and naked on that Oklahoma highway. Over a year since a 19-year-old who dreamed of serving his country was murdered by people who should have been his friends. Over a year since his family's world was destroyed by senseless violence. The investigation remains officially undetermined. No arrests have been made. The people responsible are still walking free. And Noah's family is still fighting for answers. But this case isn't over. It's not going away. Every day that passes, the pressure builds. Every day that passes, someone gets closer to talking. Every day that passes, we get closer to the truth. The family's lawsuit is moving forward. New attention is being focused on the case. Technology continues to advance, and most importantly, people like you are refusing to let Noah's death be forgotten. If you're watching this video, if you're reading this story, if you're sharing it with others, you're part of the solution. You're keeping Noah's memory alive. You're demanding justice. You're refusing to let his killers get away with murder. The current investigation is being handled by the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. They have more resources than local authorities, more expertise, and hopefully more commitment to finding the truth. Noah's family continues to hope that someone will come forward with information. They continue to believe that justice is possible. They continue to fight for their son, even when it seems like the whole world has given up. The community impact of this case cannot be overstated. When a 19-year-old can be murdered and his killers walk free, nobody is safe. When authorities fail to investigate properly, nobody can trust the system. When witnesses stay silent, the whole community becomes complicit. But technology gives us hope. New DNA techniques, improved digital forensics, better cell phone tracking, all of these tools could potentially solve Noah's case. The evidence exists. It's just a matter of finding it and analyzing it properly. The family's current hope is that someone will finally come forward with information. They believe that someone at that party has been living with this secret for too long, that someone is ready to tell the truth, that someone will choose justice over silence. They're also hoping that renewed attention will generate new leads. Maybe someone who wasn't at the party saw something suspicious that night. Maybe someone overheard a conversation afterward. Maybe someone noticed unusual behavior from one of the suspects. What we need is for people to care. What we need is for people to demand answers. What we need is for people to keep Noah's story alive until justice is served. The search for answers continues and hope never dies. If unsolved mysteries like this move you, stories of young dreamers whose lives were cut short, families who refuse to give up, and the belief that truth will eventually surface, then you're exactly where you belong. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something and you believe answers are still out there. And listen, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Every single week we dive deep into cases that law enforcement gave up on, stories that mainstream media won't touch, and mysteries that deserve answers. Your subscription literally helps us investigate more cases, reach more families, and maybe, just maybe, help solve these crimes. We're not just telling stories here, we're fighting for justice, one case at a time. Subscribe right now and join our growing army of truth seekers who refuse to let these cases die in forgotten file cabinets. Hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss what we uncover next. Some of these revelations will absolutely blow your mind. And please share this with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might hold a piece of the puzzle. What detail in this case bothered you the most? What do you think investigators should have done differently? Do you have theories about what really happened? Let us know in the comments below. Your perspective might be exactly what's needed to crack this case. Do you have information about this case? Don't hesitate to contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. Even the smallest detail could be the breakthrough investigators need. What unsolved mystery should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, the search for answers continues, and every case deserves to be solved. If you or someone you know has information about Noah Presgrove's death, please contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation at 405-848-6724 or submit an anonymous tip through their website. Your call could bring a family the answers they've been waiting for.